systems I was using on my laptop.
This is Jesse Dodge. He's an AI research scientist.
But today we're using supercomputers, right? Some of the large AI systems that people are familiar with, like the chatbots or the image generation systems, those run on really large supercomputers and consume a potentially very large amount of electricity.
These very large amounts of electricity produce very large amounts of heat. And also that hum you just heard. To keep the data centers from overheating, they must be cooled down. And this is usually done in one of two ways, using air conditioning or water, and lots of it. Let's say I engage in a 15-question conversation with ChatGPT over how I could be more environmentally conscious. Experts calculate I would be consuming about a half liter of fresh water. And this is where AI can be a little problematic.
Access to clean water is competing with, let's say, local uses for it.
This is what got Google into a bit of hot water soon after it announced plans to build a $200 million data center in the working-class neighborhood of Cerrillos in Chile.
We all use Google Search and other Google tools. So initially, the neighbors were quite happy that Google had chosen this area for building their data center.
This is Sebastian Leuede, an AI ethics and society lecturer at King's College London.
They saw it as synonymous with progress, development, a new pole of innovation in the area.
But once they took a look at Google's environmental impact report for the data center, they were startled by what they learned.
They found out at some point that this Google data center was going to use 168 liters of water per second in an area facing drought.
A drought that is now in its 15th year and caused elected officials to ration water in the capital of Santiago. But after fierce protests from the community, the permit was put on hold. A local environmental court told Google it needs to modify how it plans to cool its servers. And Google's plans for a data center in Uruguay also faced pushback when locals learned how much water it would consume. And water isn't the only natural resource that AI requires. It needs a lot of electricity, too. And most of that electricity still comes from burning fossil fuels, which release the greenhouse gas emissions causing climate change. Training a single AI model produces more than 5 times the amount of carbon dioxide emissions generated from a car in its lifetime. That's including the emissions to manufacture the car and its fuel consumption once it leaves the factory. It's an astounding amount. Training an AI model and then ensuring its continued existence through large data centers is a massive drain on natural resources, and also drives up what researchers call embodied carbon.
So that's going to be the amount of carbon it took to, let's say, build the hardware. Just starting by mining the rare earth minerals that goes into the GPUs, shipping that across the world to then be manufactured into a GPU, and then shipping that GPU to its final destination at a data center, that does incur a really large environmental impact.
It's this impact that companies like Microsoft are trying to take into account as they set climate goals. Microsoft says it's aiming to be carbon negative by 2030, not just neutral, but negative. And one way it's hoping to get there is through Bolivia. More than 9,000 kilometers from Microsoft headquarters in Redmond, Washington, is a biochar facility operated by ExoMad Green. It turns forestry waste into something that's called biochar, which is essentially charcoal. ExoMad Green will produce the biochar, containing carbon dioxide, and bury it underground, where it can enrich the soil and keep CO2 from getting into the atmosphere. Microsoft has bought 32,000 tons of carbon dioxide removal credits, but that's a tiny fraction of its overall annual emissions. We don't know how much of that will grow with AI. That's one way that Microsoft can continue to expand its AI operation and data centers while saying it's still on path to being carbon negative. But is that effective enough? Or is it just a form of corporate greenwashing?
If we do something like buy carbon offsets, that doesn't negate the action that we took.
Meaning, that doesn't undo the carbon emissions that we've produced.
These two things don't cancel each other out.
As AI advances, governments and regulatory bodies are trying their best to keep up. This year, new AI rules passed by the European Parliament will go into effect, impacting businesses like Edifion. The EU AI Act does reference the impact of AI on the environment. It asks that AI systems are developed and used in a sustainable and environmentally friendly manner, though it doesn't really spell out what that means.